Okay, so you guys can hear me. Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right in. With Charlotte, let's find yours. We're somewhere here. I think that's quite it. Richard. All right. Is this yours, Charlotte? I can't tell because I don't see your name on it. Let's see here. There we go. Is this yours? Okay, awesome. So let's talk about this one real quick. I need to do this. I know it looks weird to you guys, but I've got the GoToWebinar thing and I want to see chat while we're running through this. Okay, so increase your profits today by selling your goods and services using Bitcoin at no cost, without risk, using instant exchange. Use the world's largest, most well-run Bitcoin payment processor, the only one developed at Y Combinator and backed by Andreessen Horowitz. Okay, cool. So the target market research, I know you sent that to me in a different document. And actually, one thing I'll do is I'll just go pull that up and we'll go take a look at the back and forth. Give me a second, Charlotte. I will pull up the target market research that you sent and we'll discuss that a little bit. Okay, so these are the different target markets that you explored. It looks like you picked number 5. Is that correct? Is that why it's bolded? Yeah. Oh, all right. So internet-based, do business in a sector where the profit margins are low, such as electronics and technology. Okay. How to position why you should use Bitcoin in an ethical way, and at the end thought this group solved the most problems. Let's see. Okay, okay. Primary desire is sloth. They want more money in an easy way. And you're trying to target business owners who are internet-based with low profit margins. Okay. So essentially to save them processing fees? Is that the angle? Yep. And trust issues? Okay. All right, so if you're removing percentages and you're talking about trust, it's good that you talk about backed by Y Combinator and Andreessen, superior Bitcoin version, biggest game in town, API stuff, money transmitter in 37 states, and okay, okay. All right, I see what you're going for. Let's look at the letter itself and see if it accomplishes what I see what you're going for. Right. Now, Charlotte, when you were doing your market research on these different target markets, were you able to verify that exposure to risk and like shaving off percentage points of credit card processing was a deeper desire for this marketplace? Were you able to verify that, or is that just an assumption? Math? Okay. 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 So this is what's talking to me right now as a business owner about low profit margins, credit card fraud being rampant, consumers taking you for a ride, so things like chargebacks or refunds or, you know, requests through PayPal or something like that. I can see how that's a pain in the butt. My biggest concern with the angle you took with this one is the awareness level of the market that you're talking to. If they're a business owner and their primary concern is, their credit card processing fees are eating into their margins, I don't think it's like an A to B leap from lowering percentage points to Bitcoin. I think there's got to be a little bit more education in place in the middle. And so you're talking to an awareness level that perhaps doesn't have the immediate reaction to Bitcoin that you want them to have. I want to look at that a little bit more, though. So let's look and see what you've got here. How to increase your profit margin, revenues immediately. Today's payment processors charge between, yep, 6%, wiping out all your profit. Interesting. Nothing for payments, it's free. Okay. Increase your revenues immediately. Trust in a low trust environment. I don't know if I buy the Byzantine general story, at least not in the way it's worded. No consumer protection. Fascinating. So there's a lot of things in here that are problems and solutions that business owners want, but the instant exchange. Okay. Honestly, every single time I have a concern or have an objection, you're hitting it, Charlotte. So as I'm reading through here, it seems like the concerns that are being raised are raised at the right time and then immediately answered. So, eliminates payment fraud. Cool. You won't suddenly have access to your money. That's awesome. So there's a lot of different objections in here that shows me that you did the research and you understand what people's concerns are in this marketplace. Now, the question would be, is this going to be enough to convince them to try out Bitcoin as a payment processor? Because there are concerns with Bitcoin as a currency, because obviously businesses not everybody is using Bitcoin. Not everybody can pay through Bitcoin. Does it answer that objection? Like, does the consumer have to have a Bitcoin wallet in order to purchase Bitcoin? Or can they put in a credit card, it's converted to Bitcoin or something? Technical explanation? No. Okay. Hmm. Okay, so that might be a concern with the business owners you're talking to, especially people who are problem aware rather than solution aware. If their customers don't have the wallet and they can't pay with conventional payment methods, what is the actual transaction amount that is going to be increased? It's not like every credit card transaction that goes through their website can now get removed of processing fees. It seems like a very marginal increase. And I think that would be a major objection for this target market. Like, okay, yes, if I implement this, what's the time and energy it's going to take to implement Bitcoin, and what is the return I'm going to get from it? If they're considering Bitcoin as a solution to their problems, which I think you hit the right angle with this, where you're talking about their problems. You're specifically going over, things like up here, when we talk about it up here, increase your profit margin and revenues with the payment transaction issues. I know for a fact that in the credit card processing game right now, every single one of those companies are fighting each other to get lower rates or to capture more business by being the low rate provider, that means that obviously people are rate shopping and curious about that. But they have a competitive advantage because almost everybody uses credit cards. And if your business doesn't take credit cards, you miss out on an enormous amount of revenue, versus if your business doesn't take Bitcoin, I'd imagine you're missing out on something like 1 to 5%, maybe 10% if you're in a more technological field. But I don't think it would be much more than that. And that would be a main concern for me if I'm looking at Bitcoin as a solution to these problems. Does that make sense, Charlotte? And I think one of the big things is this entire letter is answering objections, which is a good thing, but I don't think it builds any desire, or it doesn't build any urgency, and it doesn't build any need or something to move forward with. It's basically going through and going, okay, Bitcoin has somewhat of a solution for what I'm looking for, but it doesn't really have a lot of really compelling reasons to switch right now. Like if you could make an offer that basically said, look, instantly increase 10% or your revenue by 10%, and that then would be segued into, if you add Bitcoin as a payment processor, here's how that 10% works. Like that's the angle that you could take with the exact same target market. You say, instantly increase your business revenue by 10%, especially in a low margin business. That's really compelling. And then you go on to explain, if you're not taking Bitcoin payments, especially for online payments and for things like technology or parts or things like that, then you're missing out on a substantial amount of business. It could be 5 and 10% of the marketplace that wants to pay with Bitcoin. Once you add Bitcoin as an option, you don't have to deal with processing fees, which means you get to retain more of your margin. And overall, like net return, you get 10% increase just by adding Bitcoin. And here's how you add Bitcoin. That would be a more compelling argument rather than going down the line and answering every single objection. And I think the angle was, Charlotte, that if you're both an economist and a technologist, where you understand both sides of the coin from a very academic, cerebral mindset, then it's important for you to come back to the level of your target market. And you might have a ton of knowledge on Bitcoin and a ton of knowledge on the inner workings of how it goes, but business owners don't. And business owners barely even know how their credit card machines work. But they know that they need the credit card machines in order to take payments for the goods and services that they sell, especially online. And so if you get them at that angle, the conversation that's happening in their head, like, oh man, my margins suck and I need to increase my margins or I need to increase my revenue, then the compelling offer of, hey, add 10% to your bottom line for free immediately is very powerful. Does that make sense, Charlotte? Let me know if that makes sense. What else we got on here? All right, Debbie, welcome. How's it going, Debbie? Anthony's on here too. Okay, cool. So given that, I think that the letter itself, I think the headline can be definitely reworked. So instead of increase your profit today by selling your goods and service using Bitcoin, I think something to the extent of how to immediately increase your profits by 10%. Actually, I'm going to take away immediately because immediately is overused. How to increase your profits by 10% overnight for free using a push button simple payment solution or something, or maybe just solution in general. That's an option. And then we go down and we start writing more headlines along that vein. How to immediately increase your profits by 10% overnight. How to immediately increase your profits by 10% today how to immediately get 15% margins or better margins or something like that. Now we're talking to the specific need. Debbie, do you have a specific a time that you have to leave? I haven't seen any Facebook messages today. I saw that you sent one, but I didn't read it. So does that make sense, Charlotte, where that's the kind of angle that we're taking? And then once you get down there, you can start giving in these proof elements and trust elements like, if I'm a business owner, do I know what Y Combinator is? Probably not. But if you said like the largest incubator for technology in Silicon Valley, or the multi-billion-dollar incubator in Silicon Valley, something like that would make more sense. Okay, 15 minutes. We can do yours next, Debbie. Does that make sense, Charlotte? Where you're coming at it from the angle of your chosen target market, which was business owners with low margin companies, specifically online companies. Does it make sense to talk to them from where they're at, as in increasing their profits, increasing their bottom line, increasing their margins, and talking to them with the proof elements like, big numbers, big names, the most successful Silicon Valley investor of all time, something like that. I don't know if Andreessen actually has that title, but something that would make sense to them rather than using their name or the title or anything like that. Does that make sense to you, Charlotte? Okay, awesome. I think that overall your piece was solid in terms of what it was trying to do. It answered a lot of objections. Every single time I thought of something, then it came up and you answered it. But what it didn't do was lead me down a sales, a very persuasive avenue or a flow. And I think that was because you got very cerebral very quickly. And just started knocking out objections. Now that would assume that I have objections, and that would assume that I know what my objections are and what they should be. So I think when we take a step back and we look at it from the angle of the business owner, then this could be, more selling. Basically more selling, but more, I hate to say this, but this is really what you have to do. You really have to dumb it down. You have to make it clear for the people who are reading it. And even if they're very smart individuals, they're very savvy individuals, then they are not technologists for the most part. They are not techie people. They might even, not understand their credit card processors. So despite being intelligent and being ambitious as business owners, they don't have the requisite knowledge and interest in what you're selling in order to value what you're talking about right here. Sit. No rolling around. My dogs like to do barrel rolls whenever I'm on webinars. It's only when I'm on webinars, though. I think they like the sound of my voice. So, does that make sense to you, Charlotte? Does that all make sense? Okay. Cool. All right, we're going to move on to Debbie's then, because, like I said, I like all of the content here. I think that it's solid, but I think it needs to take one step back in awareness and then talk to the market the specific way. And I don't think you need a technical explanation. That's for after they buy. Like, how does this work? Okay, here's how it works. More about, hackers and maybe talking about that if they even know who that is. I don't know who that is. Bitcoin just a fad, things like that. So you answer a lot of good objections, but it's something we'll look on here. Okay. Oh, okay, great. So Debbie decided to go a little bit edgy with this one and talking to the cannabis industry for Bitcoin as a payment processor for the cannabis industry. Cool. All right, let's see how this goes. I'm excited. This will be interesting. Unfair, the catch-22 where federal law won't permit banks and credit unions to work with the cannabis industry while state law says you're perfectly legal. Yes. Are you tired of defending your legitimacy with the banks? How can a typical cannabis store owner, run a business. Okay. Dude, Debbie, I like these headlines. Um, Unfair. That's the word they want. And I've spoken, having lived in Colorado, I've spoken with a lot of dispensaries who are dealing with exactly this issue, and it's really it's frustrating for the entire industry because they've got to cart cash around and put it in storage units, and investors want to invest, but they can't. They have to find a way to pay these companies without depositing it into a bank. So it is a frustration. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. And then you're telling another story, which is excellent. Hmm. Okay. Now that state or state, it's going to have to come up with another way to manage payments. My name is John Francis, and I've discovered that my sister's story is not unique. I've been to Colorado to see how cannabis growers there are getting along. Lately, I've been visiting other states like Alaska to talk to the growers who are eagerly waiting for the green light, so they can open their doors. Some more stories all the time. Dumb restaurant idea, but won't give me the money to start my shop. Um, Three friends in different banks near my home. None of them wanted to have anything to do with my new business. Yeah, yeah. Well, and nice. So you're talking specifically to the issue here, and you're bringing up examples. Did you find these quotes somewhere, or are they made up? Oh, interesting. Okay, sweet. Good. So if these are similar or the same style quotes, they're good because I've heard people say very similar things. And I think that having accurate quotes that sound like the language that the person is using is really, really important. Awesome. Oh, that's cool. That's good to know. So you have some experience in this one as well. You have experience in this niche anyway, or your sister does, so you know a little bit about it. Then, your other really good piece was because your son was really, really into that particular piece. So, or your son was looking at film school, and that's why your prop money one did really well as well. So, for everybody listening and watching this, one thing that I really like that Debbie does with all of her pieces is connect some form of her knowledge or her connections into the piece. So in this case, Bitcoin doesn't automatically lend itself to the cannabis industry, but what we're working with here makes sense because she's connected with someone who's involved in that industry in another state. I think that's really powerful. And I think that if you can make those types of connections, you're going to write better copy because you can start to think about the people that you know in real life and communicate with them versus the people who you're trying to make up in your head. We're all really, really bad at imagining what a person would think if we don't really know that person. But if we do know that person or we know someone like that person, we're very, very good at kind of matching what we write to that person's behavior. And that's something psychologically that every human is good at. So if you're writing an assignment for yourself or for others, try to think of the person who who best fits the type of person that you're selling to. A lot of people make customer avatars and they just make someone up. So they say, her name is Susie. She's 35 years old. She has a 4-year-old kid and a 2-year-old kid. She lives in suburban Pittsburgh. And, she's a stay-at-home mom and her husband works for the law firm down the road and he's got a 45-minute commute each way. And Susie has all these problems. But if you don't know a 35-year-old mom of young kids and you don't know how she acts and how she thinks, you're not going to write good copy to Susie because Susie's fake and you don't know who they are. But if you think about your friend and you go, okay, my avatar is going to be my friend Susan, who I know personally, and I know that this is how she thinks and how she works and how she runs around and does that sort of thing. Or I know that my son is into film, or I know that my cousin is into boats, or I know that my friend of a friend over there at work is really into apartment complexes and investing. Like, think about that person. It's going to give you a much better route for everything else that you write. That's why it pays to know a lot of people. Okay. All right, all right. Prime targets for crime, absolutely. Um, okay, yep, you're hitting their market awareness really well, Debbie. I feel like this could work really well as an advertorial, as in a blog that somebody's writing, some sort of blog or article advertorial for Bitcoin. Um, Now, let's see. I have one objection, and I want to see if you actually come up with that objection because I'm more aware than your target market, so I'm going to assume that when you're explaining this, that's what they're curious about at that time. Um, so I want to see something, and then I'll go back up and I'll go look at it. Okay, security is important. Yes, it is. Um, okay. So one thing I did not see in here, which I anticipate to be a really, really, really big objection, is Pirate Bay. What happened with Pirate Bay? I'm sorry, not Pirate Bay. What? Silk Road. Silk Road, not Pirate Bay. The Silk Road, for those of you who don't know, was a online black marketplace to get drugs, like actual drugs. You can get everything from marijuana to ecstasy to cocaine, meth, anything. You could buy drugs online using the website called the Silk Road. And that was exclusively through Bitcoin. Now, they got shut down by the FBI. Their assets were seized. Their person was, put out an Interpol watch for, and I think they got caught, brought back to Norway for sentencing. It was a very big international debacle, and part of the way that they did it was because Bitcoin is secure, but it's not anonymous. And a big way that the FBI was able to track them was through the tracking of wallet transactions and things like that. Most people who are involved in the marijuana industry have been involved in the marijuana industry since before it was legal. And that may mean they grew their own plants. It may mean they had their own supplier. Maybe they were the supplier. Maybe they were just a user, but they were typically using prior to. And so, right, yeah, if they're low enough awareness, it might not be worth bringing up as an objection, but my intuition is for a cannabis market who's trying to do legitimate business, and I mean, they have a legitimate concern with the government as well, because at any time the DEA can kick their door down and seize their assets, and they've seen that happen. So there's a reason why they keep things off site, all sorts of different reasons. So it's a very weird Wild West type type industry right now. I like the idea of Bitcoin transactions for cannabis industry, but I know that one of their big objections is going to be whatever happened with the Silk Road. And to talk about that, to bring it up, you're like, maybe bring it up down here once you've sold the whole thing. And then you're like, okay, look, here's the big elephant in the room. Everybody's heard of the Silk Road and what happened with the Silk Road and how they took Bitcoin payments. Here's what happened. Here's why that happened. And here's why using Bitcoin with Coinbase is going to protect you from that versus put you at risk of that. Like right now as a cannabis business, you have three options. You have PayPal, cash, and maybe, depending on your location, some bank that's willing to give you something, perhaps. Usually it's not very high. But you also have these risks. Cash by itself is easily stealable, and it's easily seizable. And PayPal usually doesn't like working with it at all. Credit card companies won't process your stuff. Having ATMs on site is always sketchy. And so you're always at risk here of all of your income streams going away. But one of the nice things about Coinbase and Bitcoin is that going back to what Charlotte was talking about, you can instantly transition that into a bank of some sort, or maybe into cash or something that you need to do, and you twist that objection into a positive. I'm not sure what the right way to do that off the top of my head, but understanding that that is probably one of the bigger objections, I would definitely talk about it. However, let's look at the actual stuff here. So here's a solution. It's called Bitcoin. Many of you are aware of Bitcoin. It's become widely accepted. I like that you're legitimizing it here. Lots of companies that are using it, and where security concerned. Bitcoin prevents hacking. Okay, high banking fees. Transparent, final, no chargebacks, which is good. Legitimacy on Wall Street. Volatility of price, there's no getting around this one. They aren't anonymous. Yep, talk about that a little bit. Yep. So with the drawbacks here, Debbie, I would spin as a positive on all of these. So volatility of price, there's no getting around this one, except for blankety blank, which is what Charlotte brought up, like instant switch, where you can install something that immediately transitions it to a different currency or something like that. Transactions aren't exactly anonymous, which in this case, like for the Silk Road, it was a bad thing because they were selling illicit drugs over international borders. But in this case, because you are local, you can prove that every single time you sell in store using this medium, you are selling local. That's a thing you can prove in court rather than having it work against you. You still need to manage income, sales, and payroll like any other company. This is something that matters, and any company is going to have to do this, and Bitcoin makes it really easy. Bitcoin's still in its infancy, just like the marijuana industry. There's going to be a lot of fluctuation here, but what you're looking for is extra ways to get paid that are more secure, and actually having a wallet, or the secret to security is having a wallet, so your patrons who come in and use Bitcoin are going to have to know what their information is, but just like anything else, it's an obstacle that has to be overcome with that industry. So does that make sense, how you just take those negatives and kind of spin them around into a positive, and basically don't give them a reason to jump off the page, right? It's okay to say what's wrong, but I would always try to put a positive spin on it. In fact, especially if you have some big elephants in the room, I would tell them and then put a positive spin on it. Yeah. Security is the key. Coinbase. Okay. Now we're talking about Coinbase. Regular wallet, key difference is that it's virtual. Download a wallet on your phone or on your computer. Only person has private keys. Hang on those keys. If you lose them, you lose your Bitcoin. Good to know. Strong passwords. Yep. Cool, cool. Cold storage. Cool, cool. Hot wallet. I like that. I like that you give them ways to talk about it. I like that the education is flowing through here. So honestly, if Charlotte's piece and Debbie's piece could get together and make a baby, it would be the perfect piece, because Charlotte has a ton of objections that were answered specifically for business owners. Cannabis companies are obviously business owners, but what Debbie has is the story and the individual person who's writing it. Combine those together, and I think it's a really, really, really strong piece. Coinbase is special security. Yep, yep, cool. That's powerful. It's only powerful if your target market has that as an objection. Like, how secure is it? Okay, let me prove it to you. Like, why does it need to be secure? Here, let me explain that and then show you why mine's the best, that sort of thing. Like, I think cannabis owners are going to understand about Silk Road and Bitcoin, but they're not going to have a really strong understanding of the tech, nor do they really care. They care about the tech in the context of their problem. And they care about the tech in the context of the current solutions that they're looking for right now. And honestly, I think it's still a good target market, because your guys are looking and gals are looking for solutions that there just aren't there right now due to regulation. And so they'd be open to learning more about this as an option, versus other companies that currently have all of the conventional payment methods around to help them, Bitcoin is not as much of a draw to them simply because of the small amount of revenue that it would bring in. Bitcoin security will solve all your problems. Okay. Okay. I like that you're telling a story here. I like that in that story you're using Coinbase. I think that's really key, especially with businesses like this. You need to tell the story from the perspective of a user. Cool, cool. Interesting. Facial recognition ID cards and documents. Um, hmm. So security is good, but this industry also has an issue with anonymity. They don't necessarily want their buyers on the to be able to be tracked. I mean, it's legal in the state, but it's not legal federally, which means that they could be technically prosecuted federally if DEA chose to do that. I doubt they go after individual users, but that is something to consider when bringing that up. Interesting. That's awesome. 2% of everything in your wallet. That's legit. Okay. That's fascinating. Okay, cool. So I like this piece, Debbie. Well done. This is good stuff. Did you get enough feedback on what I was originally saying about objections and making sure that you answer the big elephants in the room and that sort of thing? Okay, phenomenal. Cool deal. All right. So this was Charlotte. Is that that? Let's talk about Anthony. This is yours, right, Anthony? I think it is. Okay, cool. Let's talk about that one. I'll zoom in real quick so you guys got it. Awesome. Pull this in right here. The true story of how Coinbase gave the traditional financial system, James Bond, and the world's most powerful supercomputer the middle finger while making more money faster and more easily with Bitcoin. Interesting. Okay. I don't like the headline. Yeah, I don't like the headline. I don't know if I would have any way to make it better, but I don't like it. Um, I think maybe this right here is your headline. Here's why the banks are scared of Bitcoin and investors are flocking to it. Especially like Anthony, what was your target market for this one? No worries. Okay. Okay, investors trying to make more money with their checking accounts. So basically, these guys are like the coupon clippers of investing, where they want to get a couple extra percentage points from something, um, and they're doing that with their checking accounts. Is that kind of what these are? Okay, cool. So let's go at it from that perspective. Here's why then I think then even more so right here, this is your headline. Um, Here's why the banks are scared of Bitcoin. Investors are flocking to it. Financial system treats the average consumer like they really don't matter. Okay, because People make a pitiful amount of interest on money on their accounts. Meanwhile, banks keep 97% of any interest earned. Really? Wait, what? I'm not an investor, so I don't understand this sentence. If you're an investor, do you understand that? I I don't. Um, hmm. Hmm. Oh, okay. So the statistic is that banks make 3% on average with checking account funds, um, but only give people a 0.06 return on their funds. So if you deposit $1,000 into a checking account, the bank makes $30, but you only make like 6 cents or something like that. Is that the Is that what you're talking about? Okay. I think that's more than 97% then. Anyway, um, so I think that I think the lead could be there. I'm not quite sure if it was well delivered enough to be there. But again, I might not be the target market, so I would have to see what the target market says specifically about that. But I'm looking at it now, and it just doesn't quite make logical sense to me or emotional sense. Like, yes, the bank is getting more money than me, but 97% just in my head doesn't immediately make sense. So I wouldn't immediately bring up problems with Bitcoin, but you're bringing it up in the context of why the banks weren't afraid. I would rather bring up why the banks are afraid, and then underneath it, bring up why they didn't used to be afraid, and why you weren't hearing about it, but now you're hearing about it because banks are afraid. Does that make sense? So give them what you promised in the headline, which is here's why the banks are scared of Bitcoin and investors are flocking to it. Explain a little bit about how they're getting screwed, which is what you're doing with this lead, and then say, look, the Bitcoin is scaring the crap out of banks for these reasons. Now, it didn't used to be that way. It used to be that banks controlled things and Bitcoin was only be able to use by big techie people. So it wasn't a threat. Now it's a massive threat, and it just now started. You're at the beginning of this opportunity and all that kind of stuff. That's especially with a financial investing angle. You want to take that angle of you're at the prime time to invest right now. That's what every investor wants to believe. And when they're reading a sales letter, they really, really need to believe you when you say, look, now's the time. Do it now. Don't do it tomorrow. Do it now. Because investors understand that things flow and change. And so if they're receiving some sort of information, it's not necessarily insider information, but it might be lesser known information. They typically tend to take action much faster than, uh, than a buyer like on a house or, something like that. So tell them what this headline is good. Tell them why the banks are scared. Tell them why they didn't used to be scared, and then tell them why investors are flocking to it, which is kind of what we're looking at right here. I like that you added New York Times quotes. $117 million spent on building you a safe and easy Bitcoin wallet. Um, I don't think you're at the point in this when you're explaining things to investors where you need to explain the security and power of Coinbase yet, um, because you're still trying to sell them on the opportunity. I think your first 2 or 3 pages of a letter to investors, especially financial, needs to be selling the opportunity. And then once they're completely sold on the opportunity, then you move into saying, okay, this is how the opportunity actually works. And then you sell whatever it is that you're selling on the back end. So opportunity first, then the details, then the risk of not taking action, and then moving into the close and the call. That's kind of the way that financial tends to go. Does that make sense? Also, opportunity. Okay, cool. So opportunity also can be the mitigation of risk, as in, like the apocalyptic headlines, like the recession is going to happen, the next great recession is going to happen in 17 days. Here's how to prepare yourself. That still counts as an opportunity because you've just told them about an impending doom. And for the first 2 or 3 pages of that letter, you're going to explain to them the opportunity for people who don't get screwed by the coming recession. Does that make sense? Okay. Charlotte is saying, I don't get why people who are looking for better interest on checking accounts, which is really low risk, would invest in Bitcoin, really high risk. How do you overcome that? I'm not sure. Anthony, maybe you can answer that. How do you overcome the high risk, low risk thing in this letter? Because I agree with Charlotte that that is a concern, especially when you bring up Bitcoin, because the only thing an investor might know about Bitcoin or have in their head is high risk or volatile. That's the word associated with Bitcoin, at least in most investors' heads. Can you deal with that, or do you deal with that at some point in this letter? And I'm trying to look and see. Um, I really don't see how they're making money yet. Like you hit on security a lot, but I don't think security is what that matters to them. Yeah, security doesn't matter to these guys at all. So I think that's the biggest problem. I mean, I like the construction and the flow of this, but I don't think security matters. Maybe at the end, maybe as an objection, like, hey, I've heard Bitcoin is insecure. But most people don't say that. Most people know that Bitcoin, even though they don't know how it works, they understand that Bitcoin is more secure. They get that. They don't know why cryptocurrency to them, or maybe they have some sort of misgiving, like, oh, anything can be hacked, but they don't really get it. I don't think security is the main concern here. I think the opportunity first would be the real key, and then the explanation. Also, I think especially if you get them with a headline that you know is talking to them about opportunity with banks, you didn't really fill on that promise of that headline. Yeah, yeah, the wrong angle for sure. But I think it started off, like this is a good financial headline. Here's why banks are scared of Bitcoin. Investors are flocking to it. Like that's a good financial headline. Um, make more money faster and easier with Bitcoin, maybe. Um, safer. If Bitcoin is known as volatile, you can talk about safety, but you would have to talk about volatility and not security. Does that make sense? Cool. All right. So you said you struggled with this assignment. What was the biggest struggle that you had, Anthony? I think you're typing, so I'm gonna let you type. While you type, I'm gonna bring up the next letter. That would be Richard. I think the last one is Vikesh. Okay. Come up with an angle that you could glean content for, especially when looking at the product. Okay. So hooks, angles, stories, all that stuff, that is the hardest part of writing copy. So don't get down on yourself because you missed the angle on this one. It's something that God, I've missed the angle on a lot of copy. Um, even recently, I missed the angle. Even professional, like people who've been around for 20, 30, 40 years miss the angle all the time. Just because sometimes you get too close to the project, or you don't know the market well enough, or you just didn't do enough research, or not the right kind of research. I mean, it's all over the place. So, yeah, I typically don't like to use the product's website as a basis for my copy, because other than like to learn the features of what it does and maybe look at some success stories, but my automatic assumption with every website or every product I ever work with is that their copy is crap. So they don't know what they're talking about. They want to talk about the cool stuff that they think is cool. Like, man, look at all this hard work we did on making our stuff more secure than everybody else. Like, we did a lot of hard work, and we're awesome, and you should love us, and this is why we want to talk. We're going to tell you about how awesome we are security-wise. But it doesn't usually correlate with the marketplace, just in general. That's not just Coinbase. That's most companies. So, and that's advice that I can give to anyone if you're ever writing for a product, or even if you're thinking about your own product. We get too close to our stuff, and websites especially, unless they were written by professional copywriters who know what the hell they're doing, most of them suck too, and we love our stuff and we know too much about our stuff, and so we can never talk correctly to our target market because we're too wrapped up in what we think about our products. Yeah. Okay, good. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Richard, you are not on this call, but we will go through this anyway. If anybody has questions on Richard's stuff, please post them in the chat. All right, target market, people who are new to Bitcoin. Okay, they've done some research. They haven't decided on the best option. They're still confused on the pros and cons. 25 to 34-year-old men interested in Bitcoin. The reference I made. Okay, cool. Primal desire is pride ahead of the curve. Okay. Smarter. Got it. And I would probably add, what's the word? Early adopter in there. I think that's going to be early adopter. They pride themselves on being early adopters, but they don't know enough about Bitcoin, so they're probably feeling a little tinge of like nervousness or anxiety or shame that they don't yet know about Bitcoin, and so that's why they're reading this. They're hitting a little bit of shame as well. So let me look on here. Do not sign up to a Bitcoin wallet until you read this. I like that classic headline. Solid. Let's see what we got. I don't have anything to add to that as long as it fits with the lead. I was a bit overwhelmed. Wallets, exchanges, private keys, cryptocurrency, forks, multi-sig, mining nodes, so much jargon. So I started researching wallets, found a number of options. Each of the categories, numerous providers. My name's Johnny Johnson. Sifted through all this confusing mumbo jumbo some time ago. In this letter, I was going to save you hours and hours of confusing research. Awesome. Okay, boom, right there. That's your freaking hook. In fact, I would take this, in this letter, I'm going to save you hours and hours of confusing research, and put it right underneath this sentence here. So, dear friend, when I first heard about Bitcoin, I was overwhelmed. And then, in this letter, or say like, but in this letter, I'm going to save you hours and hours of confusing research, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to make the right decision. Then this goes up and goes beneath this right here. Then you start going like wallets, exchanges, private keys, so much jargon, that kind of thing. Also, I wouldn't do dear friend, because people like to make fun of, especially in this age bracket, they like to make fun of the traditional copywriting like letter style. So I might say like, hey, Johnny here. When I first heard about Bitcoin, I was overwhelmed. But in this letter, I'm going to save you hours and hours of confusing research. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to make the right decision. That's the hook right there. That's the hook. And then you can continue saying all this stuff, like talking about all the crazy options they have, how to choose the right Bitcoin wallet. You've done some research already. I would just straight up say, no doubt you've done some research already, but when you look on Reddit and other forums, you find a whole bunch of conflicting advice. Cool. Understand all the options, implications, positive and negative. Let's screw this up now. Paper, hardware, online, or mobile, right? Let's talk about it. So, giant alphanumeric string can't be changed. So that's your Bitcoin address. Don't lose it. It's yours. Paper. Less secure when you actually use it. Okay, cool. Hardware, pros, cons. Nice. Honestly, Richard, I think this is a phenomenal angle to take for this piece. I really think that this is well done because the target market you're talking to is going to value the crap out of this letter, and then they're gonna get down there. They've gone through the pros and cons. They're gonna get to your pitch, and they're more receptive to hearing about your stuff because you've taught them something. Bitcoin 2.0, more and more mainstream, things you need from your wallet, Coinbase, bad reviews. Okay, cool. Hybrid wallet exchange is confusing. Here's talk about the real stuff, expectations. Nice. Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Good spin. This is the one thing that would concern me. Well, does this mean I don't control my bitcoins? Technically speaking, yes. That might turn me off immediately, but then you kind of call out old school Bitcoiners. I think that that's the right way to take this angle. So good job on that one. Because your target market is younger, obviously savvy, smarter, all that kind of stuff, and you say, look, old school Bitcoiners make a big deal out of this, but here's the reality. I think that's a great angle for a younger, uh, seemingly smarter marketplace. Okay. Yeah, so your stuff is safe, provided you're not shitty. Zero security breaches and over $50 billion worth of transactions. That's awesome. Two-factor authentication, multi-sig. Okay, sweet. Nice. Okay. Honestly, Richard, I'm going to give you some applause on this one. This is really, really well done. I love the angle. I like how you took it. I like the flow of the story. I like the tone that you have is very Reddit-ish, very specific to your target market. You answered all the questions that I would have about this. I would say that this is really solid. The only thing I would do is if we were putting this out to an actual client or looking over it in terms of really specific stuff, we'd go with a fine-tooth comb and change words, make things easier to read, look around, see if there's any objections that weren't answered, do all that kind of stuff. So otherwise, I think you nailed it with this one, to be perfectly honest. Well done, man. Well done. All right, last one. Any questions on Richard so far? Sorry, any questions from what I just told to Richard in the recording? Anyone? Okay. All right, last one. Let's go over Vikesh's then. Zoom in a little bit. Oh, too much. Here we go. All right. More financial headlines. Are you missing out on the safest way to profit from Bitcoin? Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. That's awesome. That's a good story. Norwegian Christopher Koch was in university, was writing a paper on encryption on a whim. He bought 25 bucks worth of Bitcoin. Now it's worth almost $1 million. Uh, this guy bought $1,000 of Bitcoin, um, sold them for 100,000. Nice. Well done. Where did you take that quote? Well done, Vikesh. That's a great quote. Thinking it's too late to get involved with Bitcoin is like thinking it's too late to get started using the internet. Well done. That's perfect, because that would be my main objection here. Like, oh, yeah, well, in 2009 he made money, but now it's crazy. Now it's going down. Or, oh, this 15-year-old was smart in 2008, but, now what is he going to do? So I think that's perfect right there, because that answers the immediate objection to your lead. Okay. You may not be an early adopter, but as an investor looking for profits, Bitcoin is the future, and here's why. All right, good claim. Let's see if you back it up. Healthcare, financial, contracts, and merchants catching on using blockchain and Bitcoin. Bitcoin ATMs, cryptocurrency. He accepts Bitcoin payments for his, okay, cool. All these famous people. The Winklevoss twins are looking to make more in Bitcoin than Facebook has ever given them. Interesting. Google CEO is an investor. Smart. All right, I like your social proof here. Um, Smartest guys in the room all have their attention on Bitcoin. Uh, Fascinating. Cool. Yep. Okay. As demand increases, the price will only go up. Okay. Okay. Interesting. So that's not a good thing. Why are we bringing that up? Malicious Pony botnet steals login information for email accounts, Bitcoin accounts, stole some cryptocurrency, um, hacked, hacked and stole some Bitcoin marketplace. Um, okay. Okay, so this is a great example, Anthony. When you were taking your angle of security with your piece and more of a financial headline, you went and you talked a lot about security, but what was missing was what I see in Vikesh's piece here, was the justification for caring about security. Like the opportunity first, like this is going to explode. Then some of the risks, like, hey, there's some issues with Bitcoin, and the number one issue with it is security. Let me talk about that. And then I'm guessing right below here, he's going to talk about how security matters in order to keep it. Does that transition make sense, Anthony? Let me know. Okay, good. Okay, cool. Offline storage. Okay, and you didn't get time to finish the letter, Vikesh. Okay, well, Vikesh, what you did right was very good. I think that you took the right angle. You started with opportunity. Um, you told me about the opportunity in ways that would matter to me, as in, here's some anecdotal stories, Here's a quote that deals with my cynicism and objection. Here's some important people who are investing, who care about it. Here's why it's going to grow in the future. Like all these justifications and proof. I would even probably layer on more justifications and proof. Here's some beneficial reasons to use it, but, and then you bring up the big but, which is the why this isn't going to work, why this is going to be a problem, all that kind of stuff. And then you frame that around Coinbase's strongest selling feature, which is security. I think that this is a powerful piece. Well done. That's what I'm going to talk about there. Okay, guys, that's it. That's everybody who turned their stuff in. Vikesh, Richard, Debbie, Anthony, and Charlotte. Like I said at the beginning of this call, I don't have assignments from Johnny, Daryl, Edie, Devin, Giles, Matthew, Yelena, Jerome, Jenny, and Brian. I have 5 people, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people who did not turn anything in. Like I said at the beginning of this call, that's disappointing to me in a big way, especially at the end of this course. If you don't put in the work, then you're not going to get the value from this. And I understand that a lot of people had trouble with the Coinbase assignment. To put it in context, my last crew, the one who had 12 weeks, they did an assignment every single week. They turned in the assignment, got graded every single week. They did the Coinbase assignment in 1 week, and they had almost, I can't remember precisely, but I'm pretty sure every single person turned in the Coinbase assignment. Every single one turned it in on time with 1 week to write. So having 2 weeks to write it is double the time. You have only worked on 4 assignments so far as compared to their 12. And it's disappointing to me because I see people who are using that 2 weeks to think up better excuses rather than to figure out the time to do the assignment. And I understand that life gets in the way. I understand that we're in the middle of Thanksgiving, and that's a pain in the butt. And I understand that internationally, stuff happens, life happens, whatever. There's no issues there. What concerns me is that I didn't really get anyone reaching out telling me that they were going to be late, asking for permission, asking for extensions, asking for help, anything like that. So for the people who turned theirs in, awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope you got something from the assignment because it was hard, and it was hard on purpose because Bitcoin is one of those difficult products to sell, and Coinbase specifically is a controversial user, or is a controversial product. It's a powerful exercise, but it's a hard exercise, and I hope you got something from it. But for everyone who didn't do the assignment, please be honest with yourselves on why you didn't do it. If it was truly due to circumstances beyond your control that you had absolutely no way of fixing, then I can understand that, and life happens. But a lot of you can search and find the real reason, which is that it was too hard, or you didn't prioritize it, or that you didn't want to do it. And if that was the case, then search yourself and figure out why. You joined this mentorship, you paid good money to be in this mentorship. I'm putting all the effort I possibly can into making this the best mentorship that you can go through for copywriting, but it's not going to work if you guys don't do the work. Thank you to the 5 people who turned those in. I really appreciate it. Again, I hope you got something from it, but for everybody who didn't, everybody who's watching this recording, please do your best on this last assignment. If you want to be part of the winter thing and do this over and get an additional 10 weeks of this, please do it. But I want to make sure that this is the best copywriting course that you've ever taken, and preferably will ever take. And I can't do that without your guys' effort. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time today, everyone. I appreciate everyone who hopped on live. I appreciate everybody watching. Thank you so much. And we will meet again next week for the Q&A, and obviously on the Facebook group and all over. So have a good one, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving if you're in the United States. happy dealing with our Thanksgiving crap and taking over our Black Friday deals if you're not in the United States. And everyone, have a wonderful weekend.